Immigrant girls, they were brought to a New York City facility early Tuesday morning after being separated from their families, according to a federal source briefed on the matter. A 9-month-old is one of 239 children being housed at the New York City shelter, the result of the family separation practice that President Trump says he just reversed. That's according to New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. He said that some of the children at the center are too young to communicate, and many need significant mental health services. Mayor de Blasio demanded more information on the separated children from the Trump administration.
Come clean with the truth. Who are these children? How many are they? Where are they? What is happening here? How is it possible that none of us knew there were 239 kids right here in our own city?
I'm back with the panel, and as much as I'm sure President Trump wants this issue to go away with the signing of the executive order, there's still 2,300 kids out there that have yet to be put back with their parents. We've heard stories about some parents being deported and their kids are still here in the United States. This mess isn't going away anytime soon.
Yeah, and there's a much larger group of children who came here without any parents, unaccompanied, right, that get shoved through the system, dropped off in cities in hopes of finding relatives, and nobody knows where they are. I mean, we can talk about ending the immediate separation crisis, but these people have to be found. I mean, it's not even clear if we know their names, where they came from, or where they're going. They are literally lost in the system.
How much do you think, if at all, this will have any impact on the midterm elections and on President Trump's popularity and unpopularity?
You know, ordinarily you would think a lot, right? I mean, this is a truly memorable moment that I think is seared in a lot of people's minds. The problem is there's been such a hurricane of outrages on both sides that we've experienced over the last year and a half, and none of it has had a particular resonance that lasts, you know, any longer than a week to 10 days. We'll see. I think there are a couple of things here that may stick. The one, just the images of the children itself, the unforced errors, and in particular, the inability to get your story straight on the back end about who's in charge of what and how this thing is getting put together. I think that, more than anything, even the policy itself, sort of tells middle-of-the-road voters these guys don't know what they're doing.
There are a lot of Democrats out there who intend to make this President Trump's Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, rightfully so. The policy lays at the feet of the Trump administration and Secretary Nielsen, for that matter. And so I definitely think this does present an issue for the president that will not go away because this executive order does not really overturn this policy. I think another question that folks will have is, what about Secretary Nielsen? Many members of Congress have called for her resignation, given her performance at the White House press podium the other day. But now we have the White House certainly basically saying whatever Secretary Nielsen said, don't believe her. So how the DHS secretary, who, when a crisis happens in this country, when there is a crisis, she's the person that's supposed to stand before the American people and assuage us of our fears. She cannot credibly do that because, you know, she lied.
So a lot of people think that Secretary Nielsen is the face of this policy, even though it was enacted by Attorney General Sessions. A lot of people also trying to make Corey Lewandowski the face of this policy, even though he doesn't actually work for the Trump administration, former Trump campaign manager. He went on Fox last night and, well, here's what he initially said when a Democratic activist started telling a story about a young girl with Down syndrome who'd been separated from her mother at the border.
I read today about a 10-year-old girl with Down syndrome who was taken from her mother and put in a cage. I read about did you say want to a 10-year-old with Down syndrome being taken from her mother?
What I said is you can pick anything you want up, but the bottom line is very clear.
How dare you?
When you cross the border illegally.
Here's Corey Lewandowski responding today when asked if he thought he should apologize.
Do you feel that you owe an apology of any sort?
An apology? And I owe an apology to the children whose parents are putting them in a position that is forcing them to be separated.
I want to believe that Vice President Mike Pence is still a good man with a good heart. He has Corey Lewandowski working for his political action committee. You should not employ a person in any capacity that projects such heartlessness and then doubles down on it. And I can understand the administration's frustrations in that this crisis was not created on their watch. But there's a reason why President Obama didn't get the hate and blame that this administration is, because they don't say things like that. They don't project heartlessness. They actually take the time and care to figure out what's going on rather than just firing off some tweets and bumbling around the White House. And so They own this.
Simone? Womp, womp.
Womp womp was extremely inappropriate, and I don't think Corey Lewandowski understood that he had a window today to try to make this right, and that window is now closed. And so, for everyone that continues to have Corey Lewandowski on their payroll, to invite him in, to hire him as to work with him, to be clients of his, all of these folks, in my opinion, are saying that they endorse the policies and views of Corey Lewandowski, and they think that this is okay.
So just we did some research as to this story about this girl, and it's a true story. I first read about it in the Wall Street Journal. Her mother was being smuggled across the border and by a U.S. citizen, and the mother is being held not for breaking the law by crossing the border, but as a witness in the case. And for that reason, she was separated from her daughter who has Down syndrome. Corey says he was mocking the Democratic activist who is playing politics with children.
It doesn't matter. I mean, look, the story itself does illustrate how complicated this issue is, right? I think there are a fair number of Democrats who would like to believe that this is just kind of one decision in the wrong direction. As soon as you reverse it, everything is going to be fine.
Right, it's very
It is not. It is extremely complicated.
Absolutely.
And this is going to take a long time to try to unwind and get actually the right policy, which, by the way, we haven't had in 20 years. We haven't had the right policy. As to Lewandowski, look, I think part of the problem the administration has had with this and many other issues is they've got folks that speak with sort of a dispassionate analysis of real human issues that don't seem to identify with what has to be the desperation of people coming to the border in the first place, right? If you can't figure out in your head how desperate an individual has to be to put their child knowing that they're likely to be separated with them into that border facility, if you can't figure out why that's not a law and order issue, you ought to have somebody else speak about it.
But here's the flaw, and it's not exclusive to Corey Lewandowski, is that you have a number of public messengers who want to make the president look good. You have people like Laura Ingraham on Fox saying, well, it's like a summer camp. You have Ann Coulter saying these are child actors. You have very nice Fox and Friends hosts saying, well, it's not like Nazi Germany. They're not being gassed. These people are putting a higher priority and trying to cover for the president than searching the humanity in their own heart.
I think on the other side of that is that you saw congressional Republicans, and in particular, I thought right away, Senate Republicans come to a very quick consensus that something needed to be done, and we're ready to pass legislation on it. So I don't think this is sort of a monolithic critique.
Well, no, but I'd like to note that there was a Feinstein, but to that, there was a Feinstein bill on the table that all of the Democrats had signed on to, and it took days for the Senate Republican caucus to say something of that matter.
Well, I think that actually illustrates that the Feinstein bill has got a tremendous flaw that would prohibit the enforcement of violent criminals within our
And we'll talk
border.
about that. We're keeping you guys around. Stick around. I just have to take another quick break. The government is calling them, quote, tender age facilities. These are detention centers for young children under the age of 10. Does softening the name make it any better? Stay with us.